What's up, rockers?
Hey, I'm Kaz.
And I'm Shay, and welcome to a special edition of For the Record with Kaz and Shay. Who do we have as our guest today, Brian?
Today, we are lucky enough to have the honor for one of the best visual artists out there today, Mr. Justin Hampton.
Justin, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
In your home, in your studio here.
Portland, Oregon. Justin, you guys probably have seen his work everywhere, especially in John's house or my house. It's hanging up everywhere as we collect a lot of show posters, and over the years we've got to actually meet Justin on a personal level and just admired all of his work. We're going to touch later. He's going to have his first book coming out called Visual Feast, which we'll put up the pre-order links on our episode, and we'll also talk about it. It's on justinhampton.com. But anyhow, we're going to talk to Justin as we're looking around his room. I'm just sitting here so like flabbergasted on like them Crooked Vulture autograph poster, and it's just mind-blowing, but we're going to kind of get to the bottom of how it all started with him. John, do you have anything you want to start it off with?
Well, yeah, first of all, Justin, my house, my entire first floor is filled entirely with concert posters and concert flyers and albums, and you're featured 5 or 6 times. I love your work.
Nice.
So I just happy to have the opportunity to learn more about you. I want to know about you, Justin.
Cool.
What came first, your love of art or your love of music?
I mean, I think they were kind of integral, honestly. The interesting thing about that particular thing is growing up, I was far more interested in becoming a comic book artist. But as I came into my teens, I was very much in love with music, punk rock, metal, just all avenues of music. There's so many different genres that are just phenomenal. But I never really thought about doing like merging my art with music. It was never really much of a thought. But when I moved to Seattle, that's when I started, seeing that it was such a part of the local scene. And I'd kind of come to realize that comic book work was like a shit ton of work compared to like doing a single image. So I was, but I did quite a bit of comic work. But then I slowly started doing stuff for music magazines like The Rocket, and then getting asked to do flyers and seeing them around town and really kind of enjoying that. And then kind of just realizing, like, in this weird kind of epiphanous moment of like, this is merging 2 of my loves, visual art and music. And it just made so much sense to me. And I just kind of like fully embraced that and left. I didn't leave comics entirely until the late 90s, but I embraced the rock poster work and was really into the idea that was bringing those 2 influences together like that. Yeah.
So you mentioned The Rocket. You started working there, 1990?
Mm-hmm.
What a great time to be in Seattle.
For sure.
What was that like? What were the bands that you were going to see? I mean, I'm sure it's all the big ones that everyone knows about.
I mean, it was phenomenal. I turned 21 in October of '89, so to be able to go to bars and stuff while those bands were still really small, and I saw Soundgarden at the Central Tavern. I saw Alice in Chains there as well, and all of those bands were still playing local venues, very small venues, So I was able to catch all that before they blew up and turned into national acts and were playing arenas, So those were pretty amazing times.
And then what sort of work did you do in The Rock? Was it all art? Were you just doing any writing, or just strictly all art?
I was kind of like the, a hired gun for whatever they threw at me. So it was either album reviews, movie reviews, the op-ed. I had the op-ed, for like a year, where I did every monthly op-ed. So that was really fun because I really got to kind of sink my teeth into different subjects, a lot of which were music related for the, the music magazine, the angle of, laws that were coming up against flyering or against, whatever. So I got to do a lot of op-eds about that kind of stuff, which was fun.
And looking back, I mean, The Rocket was my source. I mean, internet wasn't really big back then.
Yeah.
So, you had a lot of the visuals. Like, The Rocket would come out, I would go to my local record store, and I would want to see which bands are playing, because that's when the Seattle thing was getting big, and that's the way you kind of were to learn who's playing the Central Tavern, who's playing at the Color Box or the Show Box or the Rock Candy or whatnot, And through all this is when you started doing this, and then is this how you kind of started to meet all these bands, and then kind of how did all that work with you, where you ended up doing all this beautiful work for these guys?
Thanks. Well, I would say that the Rocket was the beginning, and that was like a lot of different people worked there, also were in bands or worked as promoters or whatever. So I started getting asked to do flyers, just black and white flyers for like practically nothing, and I would get in the show for free and maybe get some free beer that night or whatever, and that was the one angle. But the other was I started working for a local T-shirt printer who was Jim Sorensen and Jeff Ross were the two major printers in town, and they printed for everybody. And so it was Nirvana, Soundgarden, Mudhoney, just down the line. And and so I started getting to not only print those shirts for those bands, but sell them at their shows. The different band members would come in and discuss projects, and Jerry Cantrell would come in, or Jeff Ament would come in, and they'd sit down with Jim, and we were all in the same room basically as we were working, and would get to know these guys. And sometimes it would, Jim would say, "Look, I'm really busy. Can you take on this Soundgarden design and give it a shot and see what you can come up with?" And that's when I got to throw my hat in the arena with that kind of stuff. And I started, having meetings with different band members and whatnot. Jim and I met Cornell and Susan Silver one time in Alki to sit down and talk about a T-shirt design for an upcoming tour. And, that became more commonplace. So I really got enmeshed in that world at that time. And that's where I learned screen printing. I didn't actually print my own posters, but I learned the language of screen printing from doing T-shirts. And once I made the segue to posters a couple of years later, I understood it. It was a little different because, T-shirts much more, it's like butt registering. You don't put anything like under the black, like everything has to line up exactly. So a little different, but the idea was the same. Color mixing, color theory, all those things that I used in T-shirt printing came into play with the poster thing too. So when I started dealing with poster printers, I knew the language, so that was easy.
And do you remember the first poster that you did that you got more than just free beer? I love free beer. That's an aphrodisiac of mine. Anything with free beer. Move every piece of furniture in your house, give me a couple beers, I'm there. What was the first commissioned work that you got paid for? I
did get paid for a lot of those early gigs, but again, it was like $25 or something like that. But it's hard to remember the first one I actually made decent money at because, like we were saying back then, there was no internet, there was no collector base, there was no, infrastructure for that. It was all kind of brand new, So, in fact, what I used to do is I would do these posters for a promoter, and I would get a small stack of my own, 25 copies or something like that. And there was a couple different galleries across the nation that carried this stuff, one of which was Off the Wall in San Francisco on the Haight. And I would send them, but the way this was done is back in the day, you would send a poster of each one that you've done, let's say 4 new designs. They'd open the tube when they got it a week later. They'd call you and say, "We love it. We'll take 2 copies of each." And you'd send them 2 copies of each. And whenever they sold, that you'd eventually get a check for whatever it was. And it was like literally handful of posters, "Oh, they sold really well 2 months later. Do you have any more?" It was a totally different ballgame. It was very much DIY, and you had to kind of be in the know. And then other people would tell me, "Oh, you should check out so-and-so over in, Chicago or whatever." And I'd send them a tube of posters. It was very slow, very snail mail kind of.
A lot of the bands worked that method too back in the day. Starting off, they would drop off their demo tapes or whatever at a record store on a consignment. Drop them off, you sell them, we'll give you some of your money back or whatever. And it's, but like you say, it's like coming out with all that artwork where you're learning, going from T-shirts now to screen printing and stuff. It's just almost like you had to take on like a different artistic style, not a style, but a method, so to say. And was that adjustment different for you at all between the two?
For sure. The main thing for screen printing in particular, especially for poster printing, was back in that day, a lot of the stuff was done pretty DIY. So like the printers were, they were good, but they weren't amazing like they are today as far as it being like getting stuff dialed down to the micron, you know what I mean? Where you're like literally dividing stuff, you're hiding a color underneath the black line by like 3 pixels or something. Whereas back then, I would make the lines really thick to give them a lot of room to hide the color under it in the trap because there was a lot of slop, there just was. Not to diss on those guys. They did awesome work for what it was, back in the day. But at the same time, you knew that stuff was going to move around. There's so many different factors to it too, whether it's like humidity change and if they get only so many colors done by a certain time. They're in a cold warehouse. It's breezy, It could move. The screen could flex. The paper could, stretch or shrink. And you'd come back and they'd lay down exactly where it was supposed to be, but it was suddenly everything's out of register. So I did really thick, chunky lines because of that. And it just kind of kept going because it became a style.
Right. I mean, John and I always talk about your artwork and like how you can do one for Lanigan with a whale and then with a radio, and they're both equally as awesome. So like when you approach or have a meeting with like I say a Cornell or an Ahmed or Lanigan, walk us through the process of how you guys kind of find a middle ground based on like what you want to do artistically, what they want to do artistically. How do you guys kind of meet? Like, give me an example of maybe one of your favorite ones that's come together and, you know.
Cool. Well, I mean, first of all, obviously, Mark, his passing is really hard. That was one of the coolest collaborative efforts I've had in my career, was to work with someone so closely, because oftentimes when you're working with the band, you're either working with the merchandise company or the management or someone in between, a middleman type of thing. You're not working directly with the artists themselves. Some you begin that way and then you move on to working with whoever's in charge. The trust is built. But with Mark in particular, we always talked on the phone. We'd talk for like an hour. He'd send me like a version of whatever album was about to come out in its final form, but months ahead. So I'd get this amazing preview of what the new album was going to be, and I could really absorb myself into it and kind of get what he was trying to convey musically to what I was going to interpret visually, And so, I'd have time to really kind of chew on it and think about it, and then I'd present an idea or two, and Mark was really stoked to talk about the stuff, and he was really interested in the process. And so it was really fun. It was really fun to have these conversations and, text something to him or email something to him and get instant feedback and, oh, I don't like that at all, or I love that. It was mostly I love that, honestly. Like, yeah. But occasionally he'd say, yeah, whatever it was, what I mean? I don't want that in there, But it was cool. It was really cool. I definitely love that, and I miss having that collaborative effort, especially with him, because his lyrics were so visual anyway, So it was just endless, places to conjure up imagery for his lyrics because they were so incredibly visceral,
Yeah, we always felt that your imagery tied in so well with his lyrics.
Thanks.
It was just kind of a neat collaboration. Mark always talked highly of you.
Cool.
And like I say, it was a bad loss for everybody in the music industry, so.
So I think I first became aware of you like in the early 2000s through your work with Queens of Stone Age, which is one of my all-time favorite bands. And
cool.
You have a poster, a Vegas poster.
I couldn't tell at all.
Oh, yeah. So, this is from their 2014 concert where you do the Keller Auditorium. You have the lizard on the marquee. Mm-hmm. That's a great one.
Thanks.
So how did you start working with them? And I love the Rat Pack poster you did for their Vegas show. That's, I think, the first thing I ever saw.
2003.
How do you start getting to work with a band like that?
Basically, that one was where I knew the local promoter, Infinite Productions. That was 2002. And I reached out and said I'd like to do something for them. And I had also just gotten in touch with their management as well. And so we kind of spoke and said that we'd like to do a first poster. And so I did the design, and then I went to the show, and it was an incredible show at Graceland. Were you at that show?
I was not.
That was phenomenal. I mean, it's such a small venue for such a colossal band that was about to go just giant with Songs for the Deaf. And so after the show, I was able to meet the band and Josh and everyone, and I got everyone to sign some posters and talked for a bit, and they liked what I did, and they were interested in having me do more. And so the conversation became a real tangible, of what we could do forward. And so I did another poster for a European tour, which is this one behind me here. And then that was successful. And then I pitched the idea of doing an entire tour series for them in 2003, where myself and Jermaine Rogers and Emick would do every single date on the entire tour, a new poster. And the interesting thing is that's such a commonplace thing today, but at the time, no one had done that. Like the closest that had been done to that was Ames Brothers with Pearl Jam. they had done quite a few dates, for Pearl Jam, but I don't think they had ever done a single entire tour where there was a different poster for every single show. It was like select dates, and it was impressive, But we were like, I think in a way we kind of like were almost biting off more than we could chew, because it was an ambitious idea under a really fast deadline. And it was really fun, but we ended up doing their entire spring tour, and it was great.
You have pretty much total autonomy, or they have to review it? I mean, are they trust you enough, like any poster design that you come up with is going to be like killer, like that's it, that's the one?
That was the amazing thing about working with Josh, was that he liked what he saw enough to just give us complete control. We had entire creative freedom to do whatever we wanted. So, in fact, they wouldn't even see what we were doing until it arrived at the merch booth the day of the show. And so I talked to Mark about this, because that's when Lanigan was in the band as well. And he said it was like kids on Christmas. They would go to the merch booth all excited to see what it was. And then Lanigan would say, hey man, I know that guy. He's a good friend of mine. He does the best ones. To all those guys. And I'd only met Mark like twice at that point, and I thought that was pretty awesome for him to say that.
And it's cool. Like you had mentioned, like, God, what a crunch time to get, like, you do a whole tour. Like, real quick, give us a quick time frame. Like, by the time you like come up with an idea, bands like run with it, how much time do you need for the whole process? I mean, what does that normally take? Someone like you that does this type of work, like, I'm looking at this going, man, the amazing detail in all your work.
Right.
I mean, walk us through that.
A lot of sleepless nights.
You're doing everything. Starts with a sketch. Are you all hand drawn? Mm-hmm. Okay, wow.
Hand drawn, hand inked, and then scanned into the computer, and separations done in Photoshop. And it was insane. I mean, it was really, really crazy. I think it came down to, we each did 8 designs, and that's what made it work, was that, we would just alternate the dates. So we would just basically pick a date for the starting point, and someone would agree, and then it would just be, okay, who alternates from there, And so every third date or fourth date, it would be yours again. So, but it was crazy. It was, some posters I knocked out in like 2 days or a night even, that were, it's really simple. They had to be, you know what I mean? Other ones I was able to focus on and put more time into, the ones that came later in the tour. And it gets dicey, because you're not only depending on yourself getting it done in time, but getting it to the printer in time for them to print, and then for them to ship to the venue across the country. So there's a lot of moving wheels.
Someone else.
Yeah.
Trying to get it
on that tour in particular, there was a couple moments where I was like, holy shit, am I going to have to fly this fucking thing over there? Because it got so close, but it all worked out. Everything wound up being where it needed to be. And it's a lot of, they put a lot of faith into you, and you put a lot of faith in your printer, and you put a lot of faith in, the shipper and the hands that pick it up at the hotel. There's a lot of moving parts. And so I handled the whole tour. I did all the logistics of that. I had a book of all the tour information, all the hotels, all the phone numbers, all the emergency contacts, all that kind of stuff. And it's a lot. It's a very stressful thing to do. Yeah, but we did it more than a few times for more than just Queens. And it was really fun. It was very stressful, though.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to hear that story, because a lot of people see the art on the wall, think it goes just from pen to the wall, but I mean, there's so many moving parts, like you say.
Right.
It's just, like I say, it always amazes me. Like you say, in crunch time, you can put out some of the best work you've ever done, probably,
Yeah. No, I think so, too. I think, there's something to be said for the just sheer panic of deadlines, the pressure of, not only having to provide something in time, but like, to provide something someone's going to want to purchase, So it's got to have some inspiration in it. It's got to have some, rock and roll attitude. It's got to, yeah.
And I've seen over the years, like I say, with all the books, like that's why I got John that book for Christmas. But
it's Modern Rock, which
nice.
I was just thumbing through again last night, and you've got so many cool entire pages dedicated to you. And so I took pictures, and they'll be thrown up somewhere in here. Right so much killer stuff. Do you have any failures, like something that didn't work out? I mean, it sounds like they all work out, but I mean, is there like, I couldn't get it done, or something went wrong?
Nothing that was ever publicized.
So thumbing through that book, it's just filled with all sorts of other artists.
Yeah.
What are the artists that you like really are into, that you really
Okay.
respect?
Cool.
Like,
Well, obviously, Jermaine and Emick, we were artists that came up around the same time, and when we decided to do this collaborative thing together, we very much were fans of each other's work. So those guys for sure. As far as other artists go, I mean, there's so many these days. Back when I started, it was like a handful that were making a living doing it. Kozik, Coop, Arminsky, all those guys. But one of my favorites these days is Malleus out of Italy. They're phenomenal. They always do just incredible work. I had a show with them in 2008 or 2009 in Seattle, and that was really cool to meet those guys and actually get to hang out. And yeah, phenomenal stuff.
yeah, we Queens of Stone Age, Eagles of Death Metal. You and Emick were backstage and got to meet him, and he had that crazy poster from there in the mirror. You know what I'm talking about? It's the reflection in the mirror.
Yeah.
Queens of the Stone Age. You look at it from like every different angle. You see something that's just. I mean,
Yeah.
coming up with that is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
Mind blowing.
No, it's amazing what can be done these days and how many people are doing really interesting, really powerful stuff.
And it's amazing what these posters will sell for on the aftermarket.
Yeah.
I think we each got a poster from that show that I think we spent $100 each, and now they're selling for $500 and up. I mean, they are. I mean, these are, works of art. I mean, they are, and that's why I have them up through my house. They're just so cool to look at.
Definitely.
And just evoke such great memories of each show.
I think, like I said, the concert posters have taken on a new kind of a form, kind of similar to record store days. People pile in, wait in line to get that one released. Well, same with going to a concert. It's like, oh, I hope they have a specific city poster, So you go to Seattle, like, oh my God, that one, like, I got a cool Iggy Pop one when he played Seattle. It was like, oh, cool. That's a Seattle show. I was at it,
Right.
And so it's become almost kind of a neat market again for you guys to have those and have the limited whatever. It helps the artist out, and it's like I say, people kind of go and they collect those items like that.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about it, especially these days, is the music industry has changed so much that, there's just no money left in music unless you're, getting on some commercial or, whatever. So it's like the shows themselves are where the bands make the money, and the merch table, So what started originally as just a cool little additional thing to, what they were doing, has now become a major, monetary stream for them to have a different poster for every show, and like I said, from the beginnings of what we did for Queens in 2003 to now, like every major band has a tour series, and it's a major part of their income, and it's, everyone takes part, and, it's interesting to see where it's come from, where we started with it. So, yeah.
So we've talked about some of the bands that you've worked with. Amazing list. Queens, Lanigan, Nine Inch Nails, Soundgarden. Is there somebody out there that you're like, God, I want to work with them? Is there a band that you're dying to get a chance to do a poster for them?
Oh, I mean, there are bands like that for sure. One that I would love to, and it's something that could happen, but it would be more like a commemorative type thing, would be like Pink Floyd to do something for, the classic rock type thing. I've done a couple of those, I just did one for The Who that was for an actual gig they had, which was fun.
I saw that. That must
Yeah.
be
I like your Who, or excuse me, the Led Zeppelin going to California poster.
Oh, thanks. The tribute
great.
poster.
And then
Yeah.
the Kiss one.
That was fun. That was
Yeah.
an official one. Yeah.
One of my favorites is you did one for Snoop Dogg
Yeah, that was fun.
with the smoke, and it goes
Yep.
above his head. And it says
Yep.
something. I can't remember what it says in
Money
this.
on my mind.
Yeah,
And the smoke.
that's
Yeah,
a really cool
Thanks.
poster.
For sure.
And so, if somebody like, what are the posters that you're the most proud of? Like these are my holy grail of posters I designed. You have a few that are like,
Yeah. It's interesting. It's kind of, it becomes like almost narcissistic to like, what's the best thing I've done? But I mean, there are ones that you're proud of, you know what I mean? And there's certain ones like the Pavement one from 95. I still love that poster, Of course, the Night Porter for Bark, that's another big one. Definitely Queens, there was one I did of Baba Yaga meets Hansel and Gretel, and that one was really fun. And there's those ones that kind of stand out. Yeah. But those are the ones that immediately kind of jump out. But there's so many, you know what I mean, of just ones that I really, really like, but there's some stinkers in there. I'm not gonna lie. I don't talk about those. I don't talk about those. They exist.
That's great.
You sound like you're self-trained. Did you ever go to art school or anything like that? Or
I did go to art school out of when I moved from Medford, Oregon as a kid to Seattle. I came up to go to art school, and but it was advertising art, which is the interesting thing about that is it was far more geared toward graphic design, and they kind of like really like kind of said you shouldn't really go into illustration because the competition's so stiff, and and they were really kind of like trying to get you to follow the graphic design thing. Posters are kind of an advertisement. Obviously, they originally were purely advertisements. Now they're merchandise basically too. But it's interesting that like I went to school for advertising, and what I do is kind of an ad, but it's for music, and it's a lot more fun than advertising. I've done advertising art too, by the way. I've been commissioned for different stuff. You'll see that in the book. Like I did something for Target and Nordstrom's, and they pay really well.
Oh, nice.
But they require you to do a lot of changes.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. The best quote I remember getting, and it's in the book because it was so good, was, "Oh, we really love your style. It's so angular and like edgy and cool, but can you round out the edges a little bit?"
I have a buddy of mine who collects show posters. He was telling me one of his friends is an artist, and the band Swans had him do some posters, so he's all excited, brought him out to the show. They looked at him. No, we're chopping them all up. It says the Swans.
Oh, that's funny.
And it's like that little 3-letter word.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just supposed to be Swans, not
Right,
the
right,
Swans.
right.
It's like, oh.
I've got a couple of those. I came to find out very early that it was all about the spelling. The interesting thing is when you do a misspelling, it's amazing how many people that are supposed to know miss it before it gets to the band. And then the band's like, mine was The Boredoms. And I spelled it wrong because I'm an artist. I'm not a, English major. And they're like, it'd be neat if you could print one that said the name correctly. And I was like, oh, damn. Yeah, I'm supposed to know English and you guys are Japanese and you got that. Wow. Okay.
Well, now it's time for 5 questions. Now, do you want to ask them, Brian, or do you?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we do 5 questions. We do it with every guest.
Speed. It's the speed.
No,
portion
it's
of
the take your time. You can take the. Okay, what's the best concert you've ever been to?
Holy crap, that is hard. I've been to so many. I mean, through what I do, I get to see so many shows. I get on the list a lot. I've seen some phenomenal shows. One of the best was seeing Lanigan at a cathedral in London. Oh. And wow. Yeah, that was phenomenal. Because it was like a legit cathedral with like the big, huge room and the acoustics and everything. And it was phenomenal. Another one was I saw David Gilmour at the Hollywood Bowl.
Oh, that would have been
and
incredible.
That was mind-blowing. Wow. Yeah, for sure. But so many. It would take forever to list all those.
Okay, we walked into your house. We saw some albums.
Okay,
your house is on fire. What's the one album you run back in to save?
After my kids and my dog and all my computer files, and that's a loaded question.
Or we could switch it to what poster would you save?
That would come first.
Yeah,
honestly.
let's do that.
That would come first.
Change it up for
Yeah. I mean, that's one right there that I would save. Yeah. Them Crooked Vultures, signed by John Paul Jones and Dave Grohl and Josh and Alan Johannes.
Yeah, see,
sure.
Kaz and I we started this. We've been on this epic 10, 11-year run of going to see shows together. We've been friends since we were like 5 or 6, but we've seen over 300 shows in the last 11 years. Nice. This predates when I started seeing concert again.
Okay.
I would have loved to have seen
it was phenomenal.
them.
That was a great show.
And I'm just wondering with, Taylor Hawkins passing away from Foo Fighters, will this spur on another album from these guys?
I mean, regardless of that, it would have been cool to see another album. I think I would like to think that they're going to do something new. Yeah, that would be phenomenal. I mean,
not to
John Paul Jones, just him alone, let alone the 3 of them together, plus Alan Johannes.
He is such an amazing guitarist,
phenomenal.
multi-instrument. That guy is.
Yeah.
I would 11.
Yeah,
I love
11
that.
was a phenomenal band.
Okay, fill in the blank. People would be surprised that I listened to
07, Massive Attack.
Oh.
Some electronica stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny because the rocker end of things and the fact that I've got the look, especially now, which I had back in the day too, people just assume I'm all about the metal or whatever. And I love me some metal, but I'm also like, it's every color of the rainbow. You know what I mean? The music is a very wide, ranging
Absolutely.
thing. So I've never subscribed to one genre ever.
Good. Okay, you've won the lottery. Who plays your celebration/retirement party?
That's really funny. Retirement. What's that? That's it. Yeah.
Hopefully it happens for all of us.
I don't think that's ever going to happen for me. I mean, as an artist, number one, you know what I mean? There's no 401k involved. But there's no retirement plan. But at the same time, artists always create. So as long as my hands function and my brain's going, I'm still going to do work. But I don't know who would play that. I don't even know. I think I would just go sit on a beach somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe we'll have to do a second episode, and then you can think about it for a while. Okay, the last one. Okay, if Lemmy greets you at the pearly gates, what does he say to you?
Fucking brilliant. Justin, welcome to hell.
Oh.
So fitting. So fitting.
So I want to say something that I'm sort of jealous of both of you because you obviously love music, but you get to incorporate your art. Brian through his photography and you through the poster. It's just so cool that you get to combine two great loves. So it's so amazing.
Well, it was just funny as we walked into this room before the whole interview started. I was looking around and I was quizzing Justin. I go, "Who's that picture with?" I couldn't see from a distance. She goes, "Oh, that was my brother. He played in a band called the Ayatollahs." I was like, "I know your brother. He played at a place in Tacoma called Fender's opening for the Super Suckers. Big, tall guy, 6'7".
Yeah.
There you go. He gave me a poster, and Justin described me. Goes, "Yeah, that was my poster."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, how cool!" So we go back further than we really knew we did.
Yeah, it's amazing how Kaz's brain worked. If you ask him, "Hey, what'd you do yesterday?" He's like, and then you ask him, "Hey, what was this concert in '95? Where was it? Who was playing? Who was the opener? How much did it cost to get in? What'd you do before?" It's amazing what his brain remembers. So, Justin, I think this wraps it up. Can't thank you enough. Thank you for letting us in your home, checking out your studio.
Absolutely.
And
thanks for coming.
Justin's got a new book coming out called Visual Feast. If you get on his website, www.justinhampton.com, there will be a pre-order, and you can kind of preview his work. His art's for sale on the website. Check it out, and you guys will be amazed. And I'm Kaz.
I'm Shay, and thanks for watching another episode of For the Record with Kaz and Shay. See you next time.